Today is the EduCon session for AI and JJC. And for pun's sake, it is food for thought and moving forward. I'm Nathan Borg. I've been with the college for 20 some years. So I've got plenty of experience with the technologies and some of the policies and procedures across campus. Let's see. What is AI? Again, it's more than ChatGPT. It's a type of technology that's been around for quite some time. The original concept of artificial intelligence started in 1956. The first chatbot was actually Eliza in 1966. AI is a set of tools ranging from machine learning, computer vision, natural language processing, and now the generative AI that has gained a lot of attention over the past few years. Some good examples for machine learning is anytime you need to process or I don't think that audio is me. Yeah, I'm getting a audio feed from somebody else's machine, I think.
In the chat, I see everybody's muted. I can check the other attendance, but I think everybody's muted.
So I'm getting what sounds like a video ad, and I'm not seeing anything on my side showing. There we go. Okay, that was a bit odd, but anyway, again, machine learning has been used for things like object identification, Netflix recommendations, again, computer vision, OCR, facial recognition. Anytime you've done background substitutions in Teams or WebEx, natural language processing, became very prevalent with the deployment and adoption of Alexa and Siri and the other voice assistants over the past few years. And again, generative AI came to the forefront with ChatGPT in late 2022, 2023. It's been expanded to DALL-E. And again, the focus at the end of this presentation will be towards the Microsoft Copilot for Web. Let's get back to there. As far as what we are already using it for AI in our environment on campus, many of our security tools, they actually go through and aggregate events, system logs, other pieces of information, and allow the group to be informed when there is a potential risk such as impossible travel or atypical travel, which the short answer for what those would be impossible travel is if you log in Joliet and then 5 minutes later you log in San Antonio. The algorithms and machine learning processes are aware that you cannot do that type of travel within that time period. Atypical travel is a user behavior analysis. So if your typical 9 to 5 login process is, again, at 9 o'clock, you log in at Joliet all week. And then next week, if you're on vacation, it may get flagged as atypical travel, but again, it's not typically an alarm. But also, it does track things like logins across machines. So if you log in from one machine typically, and suddenly it sees you logging into a dozen machines across campus. Again, that's machine learning, alerting security, and triggering an investigation. Again, within data warehousing, institutional research, a lot of the reporting is powered by machine language. And depending on the tool set that they use, they can also add a layer of natural language processing. So instead of trying to manipulate the slices and dices of a pivot table or other large set of data, they can just type out a short question asking for, a specific metric or KPI. What most of the campus is familiar with as far as office usage for natural language processing, the predictive text in Outlook and Word. PowerPoint Designer will, if you start with a set of blank slides, fill out 5 to 10 of them. Natural language processing will kind of read those slides, suggest clip art, suggest layouts. And then Speaker Coach will actually, listen to you as you speak and present and give you recommendations on pitch, tone, rhythm, removal of filler words, a lot of those metrics that are beneficial in improving your communication. And then again, Copilot for Web, as I indicated, we actually already pay for this. It is a GPT-4 based service. When you look at OpenAI and ChatGPT or Gemini and Google's solutions, the more advanced, more modern generations of that software is often behind a paywall. And again, the college is already providing access through our campus agreement. Starting in the food/FUD, fear is definitely one of those things that is causing people to take a step back in adoption of AI. There's a lot of concern over data privacy. There's a lot of concern over accuracy, which in the world of AI is called hallucinations. There's also some very deep concern on malicious intent, whether it is just general misuse, whether it is bias. We do know that it is a bit of a arms race between, just like with security, the bad guys, the good guys, making sure that the data comes out stays clean. There are definitely attack vectors where people have bombarded GPT solutions with biased input and actually manipulated the output down the line. So at that point, I believe 2019 or so, there were a few companies that actually put out chat bots for development purposes and had to shut them down within a day because they were no longer providing unbiased output and actually being generally offensive to all types of people. Moving along with the U of uncertainty, many of the proponents learned from those situations and have established principles of responsible of AI. Depending on the provider, it can be anywhere between 5 to 7 bullet points. Again, the general theme is all the same. Make sure that the data is unbiased, the system is reliable, no data is exposed. The solution can address many needs for many people. There is a trust in the system that what is coming out of it is accurate and who is actually liable for what is provided. That is why, for as much as many people feel generative AI can replace individuals, there still needs to be domain experts validating the information that is put out from these tools. Again, you don't want a legal decision or a contract to be binding just because the computer said so. You want to make sure that people with experience and individual judgment have some say in the final decision. Doubt is always the big one. Are we ready for it? Should we be going forward as fast as we can? Should we be doing it just to say we do it? Without specific policies and procedures in place, it can be very damaging to a company's reputation if it is misused. We do need to remember that as JJC, we are essentially a $100 million plus corporation. We are responsible for the data of staff, students, and taxpayers. And again, the way to kind of make people trust the decisions that JJC can provide through generative AI is to make sure that, again, there are guardrails in place both within and without. So, we have our policies and procedures. We pick relatively solid solutions that have their own guardrails in place. As the security field has seen over the past few years with data leaks, very often, even though there are statements of security from the vendor, most of the press around data leaks is around the consumer's configuration, not around the underlying technology. So having only one set of guardrails provided by the vendor may not be the best fit. We need to make sure that we have our supporting documentation in order. So moving forward, again, I know there are task forces and committees approved by various cabinet members that are either currently active or will be active soon, discussing things like HIPAA and FERPA compliance, discussing things such as the syllabus and fair use and academic use. We need to make sure that, as we use AI to generate content, we are transparent on when it is used. Again, we don't want to be misrepresented by what a computer can say and not be aware of what it is saying at the same time. And within the federal and state governments, they are still designing the guardrails and recommendations. Again, there was, I want to say, the executive order from the White House came out in early November. Various states have done their own action plans for AI adoption. There are definitely use cases for it in certain situations, and there are just as many places where AI should not be used, just because of that inherent risk of data leakage. We want to make sure that as JJC investigates and adopts artificial intelligence solutions, there are very defined use cases. It is not, again, a case of doing AI to say we are doing AI and have that FOMO of whether it is curriculum or productivity. Going into early is definitely going to cause a lot more headaches as the technology evolves faster than we can provide accurate policies. There are many places out there that do have generalized guidance. Again, Gartner is one, Google is one, Microsoft is one. They definitely have a recommended life cycle of deployment that we should be looking to adopt. I will start going through Copilot, and at the end of this, I will have some demos to go over what Copilot can do, what Gemini can do, and what ChatGPT can do. Within Copilot, which again is based off of the same language model as ChatGPT, you have the general search and content generation functions, There is a commercial data protection feature which helps minimize the data leakage. Whatever you provide in your prompts to Copilot does not go back to train the underlying language model and data set. The key there is you need to be signed in with your JJC account. If you do leverage Microsoft Edge, you do have access to a set of composition templates where you can do emails, memos, social media posts. You can do web page and PDF summarization. You can do tab grouping through prompt commands, and you can even change your browser theme instead of going through the actual menu interfaces. If you have not seen it before, this is the composition interface. So as I said, you can do general paragraphs, emails, ideas, blog posts. And again, if you log in with your JJC account, there are a few other more business targeted formats. As we discussed later, the general rules of thumb for prompt writing to get information out. We can go over some tone, format will be covered, length will be covered. And so, again, we can work through that on the demo. A bit more on what you can do with Copilot throughout your day. Again, you can have it summarize a PDF or a web page, and I have a few that are worth summarizing. Draft emails and social content through the composition. You can have it generate images, which the last I checked, both Gemini and ChatGPT have behind their paywalls. And again, the generating images can be for your own entertainment, or if you are doing page layouts that will wind up going to marketing and creative services, you know, you can just create some placeholders and they can work with the general layout. And, you know, if you provide them your prompt, they can facilitate a finer tuned graphic. You can also use it to learn new skills or drill deeper into questions that you may have already. I would still not, you know, use this to replace an instructor, but again, if you are discussing a topic and you're not quite grasping it, you can always use Copilot to expand on that topic when you are no longer engaged with that specific individual. You can access Copilot through 5 places. Bing.com/chat and Copilot are essentially at this point the same. The Microsoft Edge sidebar, which is going to be the little Copilot button up at the upper right corner of your Edge browser. They do have the apps for Android and iOS. And while you may have it at home already, depending on what version of Windows you are running, I believe the usage that is built into Windows will be coming out at a later date. It's just one of those differences between business and personal machines. So at a very high level, what makes an effective prompt? Being very specific and detailed, utilizing full sentences with instructions, and again, stating tone, purpose, preferred format, just as I explained through that composition template wizard. Again, being less effective is keeping it as a vague statement of just a few words, and no context or preferred output is recommended. To leverage the PDF and web page summarization and integration into your prompt, you may need to verify that this setting is in place. Again, this slide came from Microsoft, and even now they have kind of changed the phrasing, and I will go over that in the demo session. which starts right now. So let me see about minimizing and bringing up some browsers. So here we have a personal session of Copilot. And as you can see, there is a history of past chats. And again, I have the sidebar active right now to actually go through and manipulate that PDF extension. You would go to settings, sidebar, Copilot. And again, previously it was page content and PDFs. Now it is purely page content, and verify that this toggle is there. And again, because this is the personal usage, there is access to plugins and chat history. And I will bring up the signed into JJC. Again, the browser itself is signed into JJC, which is why I do not have a sign-in prompt on the sidebar, but it does say personal and company data is protected in this chat. I will go through sign in on the proper. I have multiple users configured on this machine, but when you log into Copilot, again, there is no real adjustment to the branding, but it does say you are signed into JJC and your chats are protected. Again, the notebook feature is relatively new. I have not done much usage of it yet. But again, if you want to see, we can, again, I have the strategic plan listed up here. And you can have it summarize this for us. And again, even though I typed it wrong, natural language processing should go through and correct that for us. And while that is generating, again, I've kind of got a series of prompts, but I can only go as fast as the output. I do know that occasionally when you do the Dolly imaging, it really doesn't matter if it is a personal or a business account. Occasionally it does not perform as expected. So let me see if this will work. As long as you get this hourglass, it will actually try and render, but I have seen it say that it is rendering and it'll spit out a long line of text, which it essentially feels like from the AI's perspective, it is generating it, but it's not rendering it as an actual image. Something that you may want to also do is build and fine tune your prompt. So we will start a new topic and I will start with a 5-point business plan for a candy store, complete with KPI and OKR. And for those that are not aware, I believe this prompt will actually expand on those acronyms. And then to prove that this is conversational and iterative, I Once this is done outputting, and again, even all of the tools, for the most part, when I feed it this prompt, I'll say, recommend professional consultation. This is just a baseline tool. And as you can see, also anything that it does state will get underlined, and you can actually have Copilot source that information. But again, to go back to the reinforcement and fine tuning of the prompt, I can have that output on screen and have it expand on the details for the second point, which would be the product assortment and pricing. Oh, and because I have the page up, it's actually pulling off of the strategic plan. So again, it does take some trial and error to make sure you're using it right. Even in demos, things can go wrong. So if you specify it, this is just on the fly. So again, even though it gave us 0.2 from the strategic plan, I even typed too fast and forgot to put in the 2 here. So it inferred that I wanted the explanation of the point from the business plan. So again, it drilled down and expanded the product assortment and pricing functionality. And again, for as much as this is essentially, we'll say, drawing upon common references, we can try and do a prompt on something that there probably is no true basis for it to use as a reference. So we will see what it can say about information security as written by Chaucer. So again, there was no such thing as information security. There were no firewalls. So this is essentially, 100% generated hypothetical content. And again, I know I've used, and when I did the drawing, I used a Japanese dragon kaiju in the style of Botticelli, who was actually the one that did the Lady of Venus. So if you're familiar with the goddess coming out of the seashell, that would be the artist that I used as the inspiration. And one last demonstration, just because it has always been a discussion within IT and within the general population. You can use this to frame out, debate topics if you so choose. Again, you can or cannot initiate a new topic every time you choose. That new topic will just break the association with the previous series of prompts. So, like I said, whether it's GIF, whether it's GIF, this does not give you the opinions. This gives you the topics that have been discussed out there. And then I know I did promise some Gemini demonstrations in ChatGPT. So, I can bring them up. I will feed them the same prompts, and they will generate very similar responses. So let me start with Gemini. And again, for those of you that do not know what Gemini is, up until about 2 weeks ago, it was barred. I'm assuming just off of the way that the corporate wars kind of occur within the technology environment. Just as Edge has the Copilot button, I am sure that Chrome will come up with a Gemini button at some point. So let me take that business plan prompt and keeping it side by side, I will scroll up as Gemini creates that response. Oh, I did do a new topic there, so let me have Copilot regenerate that. So here, Gemini even gives you a sample, or at least when I practiced this last night, it did a sample company name, but again, concept, target market, products, inventory, KPIs, OKRs, again, 6-month intervals, 18-month intervals. So even without a entrepreneur background, you can actually generate some of the content needed to start up a business. So, and again, as far as I recall, let me see, I don't remember if Gemini will do the image rendering or not, but we shall see. So again, I've done this prompt numerous times. Each one is always a little bit different. Previously, I had seen one where this style of, kaiju monster was actually in the clamshell that I referenced for the Birth of Venus that Botticelli painted. And now let's kind of go through the last one that everybody's familiar with. So we've got ChatGPT. You will see that, as I discussed, GPT-4, which is part of our campus subscription, is behind the paywall. So at that point, we would not be recommending utilizing that because that's an additional cost for the college. But actually, in my history that ChatGPT maintained, I did have it try and summarize the strategic plan, which, whether it is a limitation of 3.5 or a limitation of the front end interface that the OpenAI has created and provided for people, it does not actually go out to websites, and there is no native integration to read content from other web pages. One other, I'll say, concern with ChatGPT, it's more of a limitation. It is not aware of anything that happened after, I believe, January 2022. I want to say about every 6 months they do move that date forward. I believe when I was originally doing this, in October and preparing, there was a limitation of, I want to say January 2021. So they may be adding it a year at a time, every 6 months. Whether that means that they will reach parity or not, I do not know. But also, again, as far as Copilot being based on the ChatGPT data sets, it actually does use Bing search to fill in that missing year or two of gap. So I will see what I can do as far as, again, so current events in Gaza as of last update. This doesn't actually call out the timeline, but it does not provide a summary of any kind. It simply says to go check from reputable sources. But if I do the same prompt in Copilot, it should give you a short summary and very most likely give you some citations again. So, the BBC is discussing the ceasefire talks, humanitarian crisis. There's a lot of current events coming from multiple sources to augment what is in ChatGPT, what is in the GPT responses. Again, I know I kind of probably glossed over a few things, but again, we are very close to the open discussion. Again, within the slide deck that I've attached to chat, all of this information is available. So, if you want to start building your own prompts, fine-tuning your own prompts, again, giving Copilot a role so that, you can say as a narrator, as an instructor, as a parent, then you could focus on the topic itself, including the length and tone. So, if you want a short response of 3 paragraphs, 2 lines, 5 bullet points, formal, informal, humorous, all of those options are there either through toggles on the interface or direct prompt manipulation. So again, I kind of advanced the slide too fast, but again, the cat is out of the bag. There's plenty of more to read and research regarding AI, both for personal and education uses. All we have to do is kind of stay on top, be responsible, and be aware that, again, there is always the risk of bad information coming out intentionally or unintentionally. And I shall leave this up with the survey QR code. The passphrase for this survey is PLUM. And at this point, I shall kind of open the mics for any sort of discussion, whether it is incentive or whether it is warning. This is probably the only time that I will kind of open myself up for, open questions, open responses. Pretty much after the session, it will be, kind of towing the JJC IT line. So ask away if you seem fit.
I just allowed the microphone, so maybe if everyone just raises their hand, maybe Nathan can call on you or something like that would be great. Thanks.
All right, we have Daniel Johnson first. He is still muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Just a general question I have about this. How do we deal with the possibility of students who are needing to write papers relying or overly relying on AI to get that done and maybe not basically acquiring the skills they need to write papers and know how to write?
That is actually currently one of the groups that I am a part of. It is sponsored by Dr. Gray, and they are just having discussions over syllabus requirements, evaluation, course evaluation, homework evaluation, trying to figure out some of the best processes to kind of catch those things. I know that given the nature of AI, it is very hard to detect certain things. Some of the recommendations are, is the homework coming to you at a level higher than what is discussed in class? So, if it's a simple, we'll say, physics problem with, coefficients of friction, and they start using advanced calculus in the solution, that's kind of one of those things that might be a giveaway. I know it is probably a little bit harder for some classes, such as English. And at that point, I know a few of the instructors have recommended, a verbal defense, so that, either the student that submitted it has completely memorized the response, or, they won't know what's in the response, so they won't know what to defend. Again, those are still very active talks, and there will probably be more communication through academic affairs and the various support departments under that.
Thanks.
We'll go with Jeff Knuckles.
Are there plans to add a Copilot chat app within the JJC's 365 app website? When I try to use it, it says unable to resolve requested application.
If you're talking about for just like through the Waffle or the portal app list,
Yeah.
I do not know if there's a official mechanism through Microsoft. We can most likely push a bookmark to a tile or something just for copilot.microsoft.com. But the way
I put a link in the chat. There's a link out there to Microsoft 365 chat that's on a bunch of pages, and when I try to use it, I get unable to resolve requested application on the 365 site for JJC.
Okay. Like I said, I'll take a look at that link later, but there is a difference between the Copilot that I demonstrated and Copilot for Microsoft 365.
Okay.
Again, that Copilot for Microsoft 365, that is a paid add-on that is more of that full virtual assistant experience. And before we go down that road, we need to make sure that we have things like data governance in place, data lifecycle, data retention. We do not want to open up something that can essentially read any file that you can read, whether you know it or not, without knowing the scope of what you can read. Again, we've got 20 years plus of data out there. Some of it pre-exists things like GDPR, HIPAA, FERPA, all of that stuff. So we would not want to be leveraging that in a solution at this time. So like I said, we can discuss Copilot all you want as far as kind of that fun, whimsical workday optimization, not being Workday the ERP. But yeah, the personal assistant piece, that will be something to be discussed at a later time. All right, I think we've got Rudana.
Hi, Nathan. I just had a question because I tried to generate an image through the Copilot, and it says that I don't have any boosts. So I was just curious what boosts were.
I believe even with ChatGPT and Gemini, you are allowed a certain amount of requests. I got that once or twice in my, previewing and practicing for this demonstration. And I think I tried 10 minutes later and I was able to get the prompt through. I don't know if there's a way to truly, trigger that, if it's a time issue. But even within ChatGPT, there's times where the system has been overloaded and it has not spit out my prompt. Again, whether that is kind of a tenant JJC issue or a global system issue, I can always, request more information from Microsoft. But for the most part, all I can say is, just try again later. Again, even though it is a paid system that gives us priority, it is still a finite system.
Okay, I'll try. Thank you.
Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to discuss, hear my opinion on? Well, and again, going back to Radina's issue with the images, I think I've come across that boost issue more with generating images, which again would be a higher system load than just a regular prompt. So, like I said, I have no idea what the refresh cycle is on those boosts. I'd only start seeing that in my prompt testing recently. So again, I think it's more of as more people adopt the technology, there will be some more system limits put in place. Again, all I can say is, as a paid user through the JJC accounts, we do have some priority over utilization of the system. I do know that even though we do pay and we are education, sometimes that educational license that we have is a limitation. A lot of the tools Microsoft provides in general are actually, business corporate focused. So, if they're writing or producing a tool for either the general consumer or, a Fortune 500 company, those people do not have to worry about FERPA compliance. They may not need to worry about GDPR. So, when you see some things hit the news cycle and you may try and do it here on campus, it may not be available. That's basically because, the legal teams are babysitting the product teams to make sure that, all of our educational concerns are addressed. Okay, we've got a new question from Michelle.
Hi, Nathan. Thanks. This has been very interesting. I'm wondering, are you using the personal Copilot and the JJC Copilot on the same piece of hardware, a JJC piece of hardware? And if so, what are the what should we know about that?
Right now, I've actually got my Edge browser configured for 3 user profiles. And again, that's a bit more advanced, and I only use it for the demo purposes. But also, if you use incognito mode in whatever browser, that will kind of still isolate the usage between environments. I do know that if you do incognito in Edge, you will not get the Copilot sidebar. You will have to go to copilot.microsoft.com or bing.com/chat. Right now, there is still some investigation into technologies to make sure that personal sessions and corporate sessions are isolated throughout the JJC environment. But again, as far as, if you come across students, they'll be using personal accounts and JJC accounts interchangeably. The key thing is, again, making sure you're aware of how you are signed in, what information you are putting into any of the GPT solutions. Again, we do not want, student records getting fed into the underlying language models that other people use. Copilot has a functionality that keeps that JJC information separate from GPT proper.
Great. Thanks so much.
All right, does anybody else need the QR code maybe reposted on the screen before we conclude?
Let me go back. There we go.
Thanks.
And again, the passphrase for this session is PLUM.
All right, Nathan, I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you so much for doing all,
Yep, no problem.
everybody for attending.
All right.